The first breath Rowena Lachlan drew in Cross Hollow tasted of scorched earth and nervous sweat. Summer had not been kind to the frontier settlement perched on the bony spine of the Nevada high desert. Dust devils stalked the single street like hungry ghosts lifting pale ribbons of grit that clung to skin and tongue. 24 weather-beaten storefronts squatted in the late-day glare, false fronts promising prosperity that had long since bled into empty mines and abandoned rail. Spurs. A tin sign creaked above the post office, its faded letters spelling *Cross Hollow, POP 312 *, as though arguing with the wind about whether the number should be revised downward. Rowena's arrival did nothing to improve the count. She stood just beyond the stage stop, boots torn open at the toes, soot caked beneath every ragged fingernail. Gray-black streaks smudged her cheeks where perspiration tried to carve its way free of coal dust. 2 days earlier she'd been working the tinderbox boiler of a freight engine cheap pay, cheap room on the tender, cheaper respect. Then, ruptured valve had spewed steam, the yardmaster blamed her for the delay, and the foreman shouted that a dirty baggage rat could walk if she didn't like it. She'd walked off the rail, into the sage, following the tracks until the next timetable said a passenger coach might appear. When none did, she had trudged 30 miles night and day, until Cross Hollow's single crooked church steeple rose like a splinter against the horizon. Now, footsore and hollow-eyed, she sensed all 312 townsfolk give or take turn to measure the worth of the stranger in their midst. A lean storekeeper, resting against sacks of flour, pinched the bridge of his nose. 2 boarding house matrons clucked behind gloved fingers. The blacksmith's apprentice, older than 15, let a gleaming horseshoe slip from his tongs and clanged the anvil. Murmurs rippled down the walk, a tide of judgment lapping at her cracked boots. Too dirty to touch. Though no one spoke the words aloud, Rowena heard them all the same, carried on every sidelong glance, every sniff of distaste. Shame prickled her neck, hotter than the sun. She tugged the threadbare sleeves of her blouse, wishing they were long enough to hide the grime grinding into her wrists. Despite the ache in her calves, she forced herself to stand straight. Keep breathing, keep moving, keep quiet. The litany that had carried her through orphan halls, laundry yards, slop kitchens, and railroad camps sounded again in her skull. A body in motion is harder to hit. She started toward the mercantile, hoping to barter the brass buttons from her coat for water or a heel of bread, when a harsh voice cracked like a whip. "Hey, girl!" Rowena halted mid-step. A broad-shouldered man in a sweat, darkened kerchief strode from the corral gate, where half the county's cattle auction milled in restless knots. He planted himself before her, boots braced, thumbs hooked behind a belt sporting a silver buckle that boasted an engraved longhorn. "You tracked that filth straight off a locomotive?" he demanded, nose wrinkling. "This is auction day. Folks don't want soot smeared across the breeding stock." Rowena's tongue felt cracked leather, but she forced sound past it. "Need to see the store is all. Store's for paying customers." His gaze flicked over her ripped trousers, lingered on the patches, the road dust. "You don't strike me as flush." Several men lounging against a hitch rail snorted laughter. One tipped his hat, mock gallant. Another spat a bronze stream near her boot heel, the liquid hissing where it struck hot earth. Rowena swallowed, tasted iron. A drink of water then. Town pumps back o' the bank. But I'll be damned if I'll have you fouling the trough. Stock'll refuse it. The apprentice blacksmith laughed too loud. "Might be the only bath she gets, Mr. Forbes." A fresh wave of heat climbed Rowena's throat. She considered turning, walking until the desert swallowed her. But days without food had carved hollows under her cheekbones, and hunger steadied her spine like a pike. Survive or die on the road. She tightened fingers around the strap of her satchel, little more than a burlap sack patched with twine, and willed her chin higher. Forbes noticed the motion and let his eyes linger on the bundle. What's in the bag, Soot Girl? Dynamite? Stolen tack? None of your concern. The retort scraped from her throat before Prudence could stop it. Gasps fluttered. Somewhere a dog barked, startled by the tension coiling like a whip ready to crack. Forbes' lips peeled back from yellow. Teeth. Town's my concern. Sheriff's busy at the gallows in Silver Creek. Until he rides back, I keep order. Rowena's stomach clenched. She'd met plenty of self-appointed guardians, men whose sense of justice came packaged with a ready fist. A tremor rippled her calves, but pride anchored her boots. Before Forbes could reach, a quiet baritone floated across the yard. That'll be far enough, Paul. Silence spread like oil. A tall figure stepped from the dusk shadow cast by maples. Livery. Dust coated his duster's hem, and the crown of his hat bore sun-faded rings. Yet each button caught the light clean, not a speck of rust. He paused beside the hitch rail, dark eyes flicking from Forbes to Rowena with the measured calm of a man who had weighed this moment long before it arrived. Clint, Forbes greeted. The single syllable carried wariness and annoyance. You. Still aiming to bid on them brindle heifers. Matter focus. This one's trespass. He jerked a thumb at Rowena. Clint Ashford Rowena would later learn the name spoken in equal tones of envy and gratitude slid calloused palms along the rail before answering. Cleaning a trough after sundown's easier than cleaning a conscience. Paul. Forbes flushed brick red. What's that mean? It means, Clint drawled, if you run off every soul that don't meet your notion of polish, Cross Hollow Street will be empty by winter. He tipped his hat to Rowena, the gesture so lacking in pity it almost undid her. Evenin', ma'am. The address stung like balm, if such a paradox could exist. She managed a nod. Forbes fumed. Fine, you coddle strays. See if the board of stockman likes it when I tell him your cows drink soot. Clint's eyes never left Rowena. You still owe me $10 from last year's poker settle. Might be your memory improves if you leave the lady in peace. Forbes' mouth opened, then shut. $10 ain't worth a plague of fleas. Keep her, for all I care. He spat and turned back toward the pens, boot heels grinding indignantly. Knot of onlookers melted, most back to their ledgers and bleeding calves, some to the saloon. A few casting Rowena uneasy glances, as though fearing the dirt might leap from her to them. When the last rustle of their curiosity blew aside, Clint hooked a thumb at the porch bench outside the Mercantile. Rest a spell, sun's near down. Rowena hesitated, throat aching with caution. Why help me? Figure you'd do same if cards was turned. She almost laughed. I've never been holding the deck, but the words remained thought, not speech. Clint untied the kerchief knotted at his throat, shook dust from its folds, and draped the faded red square across the bench slats before gesturing. Won't splinter your dress there. She looked at the bench, then at her trousers. Ripped and coal black. Don't own a dress, then it won't splinter your pride. Despite herself, Rowena's lips twitched. She sank onto the kerchief, the fabric warm from his neck. Her muscles hummed appreciation as tension oozed away. Clint vanished into the store. When he returned, he carried a dipper and a wide-mouthed mason jar sloshing clear water. He set both on a barrel top beside her. Drink, then wet the rag and wipe the soot off. Won't have Paul Forbes accusing you of befouling cattle. Again. Thank you, she murmured, fingers closing around the jar, coolness pressing sweet relief against cracked palms. She tipped a cautious swallow and almost wept. Water had never tasted of so much. Clint leaned against the hitch rail, forearms crossed. Name's Clint Ashford. Run the Cedar Frost spread north of the canyon, Rowena. The name felt fragile in her mouth, as though unused to gentleness. No last? She hesitated, had one once. World decided I didn't need it. He nodded as though such things happened every day. World can be fool-headed. Minutes slipped by, punctuated only by cattle lowing and auctioneers hollering final tallies. Rowena used the dipper to rinse soiled skin. Gray violets traced the wear of her forearms but could not scour the embedded grime. Fatigue weighed her eyelids. "Where you bound?" Clint asked. "Anywhere not here." The reply surprised her. She hadn't meant to speak it aloud. He accepted the confession without comment. "Night ride across the flats is harsh. Coyotes. Get bold when the moon's full. My wagon rolls at dusk. Place has spare bunk if you're partial." Rowena stiffened. Kindness comes with hooks. Every job, every handout, every promise she'd accepted carried a barb meant to tether her to someone else's need. Clint read the rigidity in her shoulders. A body can say no. Won't hear argument. She studied him, the placid brown eyes, the weather-lined skin, the steady patience radiating like heat off a stone hearth. No avarice flickered there, only a calm that reminded her of prairie thunderheads, quiet until the instant they chose not to be. "Why offer?" Her voice barely rose above the creak of a loose shutter. Instead of answering, Clint shrugged out of his duster. Dust puffed as it left his shoulders. He folded the garment with care, draped it over her hunched back. The lining soft corduroy settled over her arms like dusk itself, carrying the faint scent of cedar smoke and open grass. "Storm's coming," he said simply. He gestured west where bruised clouds gathered over the desert rim, lit from beneath by a molten sun. "Can't stop the sky from throwing dirt. Can keep it off a traveler." Rowena's pulse tripped. No man had wrapped warmth around her since she could recall. The coat's weight was both anchor and question. Wind stirred cooler, now flaring the coat hem around her hips. She clutched it tighter. Thunder rumbled beyond the ridge, distant yet promising. Clint tapped the brim of his hat. "I best settle my stock bill." Wagon pulls out at full dark from the livery. He took 2 steps, paused. "If you aim to come, climb aboard. If not, ... He lifted one shoulder. "Road's open. Either way, the coat's yours till you find a better." Before she could shape thanks, not the shallow kind given to charity, but the deeper sort owed to mercy, Clint was already striding into the auction yard. Rowena watched his silhouette disappear among crates of bleeding calves and men waving bid paddles. Her throat thickened. "Storm's coming." She turned the words over like stones. He hadn't said rain or wind, he'd said dirt. A man who understood storms named by grit rather than water knew the land well. The horizon cracked white with lightning. Instinct urged her east, away from thunder, away from bonds. Yet her rib cage ached with the memory of the coat settling round her like gentle hands. Asterisk, keep breathing, keep moving. Asterisk, her old litany whispered. But for the first time, the mantra felt incomplete. Breathing and motion alone had got her here, hungry, shoeless, friendless. Perhaps breathing required rest. Perhaps moving meant choosing a direction rather than fleeing all of them. She found herself folding the kerchief, shaking dust free before slipping it carefully into a pocket of Clint's coat. Then she rose, hoisting her small satchel, and walked toward the livery. The wagon bed rocked as the trail left Cross Hollow behind and tilted toward the open basin. Dusk pooled in hollows while crimson fire crowned the mesa rims. Rowena sat near the tailgate, coat collar turned high, watching the town's oil lamps wink out one by one until only a coal-red speck marked the saloon sign. Clint rode up front, reins loose in one hand, lantern cradled in the other. A pair of broad-backed bays hauled the empty flatbed, hooves plotting a rhythm older than fences. They'd spoken little since departure, words seemed brittle in twilight, but Rowena found silence easier with him than babble with others. She traced outlines of hay bales stacked at the bed's corners, imagined their scent come harvest. A sudden clang jolted the wagon. One bay snorted, sidestepped. Clint stood in the stirrups. "Easy, Rosie, what did we hit?" Rowena peered over the side. A length of barbed wire lay coiled across the rutted trail like an iron snake. Clint cursed under breath, set the brake, hopped down. Some fool's fence trash. He tugged thick gloves from his pocket and bent to haul the wire aside. Rowena climbed after him, curiosity pricking. Wind slithered through bottle brush, carrying hints of rain. Clint wrenched the coil free of a sage stub. Metal rattled ominously. Could lame a horse at full gallop. Rowena crouched to help guide the wire off the path. Someone set it deliberate? Hard to say. Cattle rustlers blocked trails with worse. He tipped the coil into a dry wash, boots crunching shale. A distant pop split the cooling air like a hunter's rifle far off. Rowena straightened, heart lurching. Clint's head snapped toward the sound. A second shot cracked, nearer. The bays danced, nostrils flaring. Wolves? Rowena rasped. Wolves don't carry Winchesters. Clint vaulted to the wagon, thrust a hand beneath the driver's bench. Moonlight glinted on a repeater as he swung it clear. Rowena backpedaled, pulse hammering. Thunder growled over the ridge, but the sky remained dark. No lightning this time. Crack! A bullet whined past the wagon tongue, sparking off the iron strut. The horses screamed. Clint shouldered the rifle. "Get under the bed," he ordered. Rowena's legs refused to move, rooted by shock, by memories of steam valves bursting, by men's taunts ringing in her ears. Another shot kicked sand at her boots. "Rowena!" Clint's bark shattered her paralysis. She dove beneath the wagon as lead punched the oak sideboard. Inches from where her head had been. Dust filled her throat. Hooves hammered overhead as the bays skittered. Clint's low voice murmured to them, soothing, even as he levered a shell home. Rowena pressed palms over her ears, lungs burning. In the slice of earth beneath that wagon, time compressed to the space between heartbeats. Why? Are they shooting? Why now? Rage flared hot, potent. Every mile she'd run, every bruise, every dismissal for being too dirty, too poor, boiled upward. It wasn't supposed to follow her here. Clint's boots pivoted. He fired once into the darkness. An echo answered, metal on stone, then silence. Rowena's breath came jagged. The wagon creaked as Clint clambered to the seat again. "Stay put," he warned, voice taut. A final crack split the air, this one so close Rowena felt the concussion in her teeth. Wood splintered. The wagon lurched as one bay reared, snapping the trace. Rowena's shoulders slammed the axle. Pain flared white. Clint shouted, words lost in chaos, and the unsecured bay bolted into the dark tack flapping. The remaining horse plunged sideways, dragging the wagon in half-circle. Wheels gouging trenches. Rain began sparse, cold spattering Rowena's cheek with the taste of rust. Through the clamor she heard Clint's rifle lever click. Empty. Another figure emerged from scrub 30 yards away, outlined by lightning. At last a gaunt man raising his own carbine for a cleaner shot. Rowena's scream locked in her throat. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Throat blazing with dust and unspent terror, Rowena clawed at splinters of courage while the desert night erupted around her. A heartbeat earlier, the world had been wagon wheels and creaking harness leather. Now it was a stampede of sound rifle reports, iron-rimmed wheels grinding stone, thunder shuddering the basin floor. Rain thickened, spattering mud that smelled of copper and sage. The lone bay, still hitched to the tongue, screamed, half rearing, half plowing forward. Its panic echoing the wild hammer of Rowena's pulse. She forced her body into motion, rolling from beneath the jostling axle just as a bullet punched clean through the wagon bed and buried itself in the wash behind her. Splinters peppered her cheek with stinging bites. Move, Rowena. Move or die. Asterisk Clint's voice cut through the chaos calm in shape. Flint hard in core. Brakes gone. Get to the reins. She scrambled up the opposite side, boots slipping. On rain-slick spokes. The wagon lurched as the frantic horse dragged it sideways, circled in tight, terrified arcs. Clint clung to the driver's perch, one hand fisted in the sweaty mane while the other brandished the empty Winchester like a club to deter the shadowy gunman closing through mesquite. Rowena landed beside him, fingers closing on the leather. Traces flapping uselessly against the animal's shoulder. She hauled back with every ounce, grounding heels into the plank. Lightning flashed brief, electric revealing the attacker angling for a clearer shot. Gaunt frame, narrow brim hat, mustache like wire. His eyes gleamed feral beneath the brim as he levered a fresh round. Clint hurled the empty rifle like a spear. The butt caught the gunman's forearm with a bone-dulling crack. Steel clanged against rock. The attacker yelped, weapon tumbling into darkness. The momentary victory cost Clint balance. He pitched off the side, landed hard. Breath. Bursting in a curse. Clint. Rowena's cry lanced the night. The bay lunged again. Without Clint's weight, the wagon yawed. Rowena's arms stretched to tearing as she fought the reins. The horse's hooves slipped, found purchase, and the wagon jerked into a run straight. Toward a stand of basalt columns jutting from the earth like broken teeth. Asterisk. If the wheel hits those ... Asterisk. Rowena wrenched left, muscles screaming. The horse responded enough to shave the trajectory, but not avoid collision. Spokes grazed stone, snapping one rimboard. Rowena felt the impact shudder through her spine. The jar pitched her forward. She speared both boots onto the footboard. To keep from tumbling over the beast's withers. Behind, Clint regained his boots. The disarmed gunman scrambled for cover, howling to unseen partners. Echoes answered 3, maybe 4 voices. Rain veiled them, but muzzle flashes winked like fireflies amid the brush. Clint sprinted after the wagon. Rowena's frail grip on. The bay's terror was slipping, bit clamps gnashed, froth flying. Asterisk, can't let it bolt. She searched the dark road ahead, saw a shallow swale where runoff pooled. Water girl, she whispered between clenched teeth, guiding the reins toward the glimmering patch. Hooves splashed through the puddle. The sudden drag of water and mud sucked at fetlocks, sapping momentum. Rowena seized the chance, looping. Reins round the brake lever stump. She threw her weight against the rope, voice low, steady, murmuring the same nonsense cadence she used on locomotive boilers to coax pressure gauges calm. Easy. Steam off. Settle now. Miracle weather. The mare understood or simply exhausted. She slowed, trembling, head tossing but backing away from full flight. Wagon rolled to uneasy halt. Rowena exhaled ragged gratitude. The reprieve shattered as a bullet tore through the side curtain, embedding in the hay bale behind. She flinched, twisted, saw Clint 10 yards back, crouched behind a boulder, revolver. Spitting sparks, 2 shapes flanked him, firing in relay. Another crept toward the wagon's flank. Length of chain swinging from gloved fist. No ammunition lay within reach. Clint's spare crate still strapped under the seat, but impossible. While gunfire raked the gap. Rowena's gaze snagged on an iron pry bar wedged between floorboards, a lever Clint had used earlier to shift hay. She snatched it, hefted the cold weight. Not a rifle, but forged steel did not need bullets. The chain-bearer lunged for the Posna. Wagon's wheel hub. Rowena met him at the rim, bar slamming down. Iron clanged against knuckle. The man snarled, recoiling. She vaulted off the footboard, landing atop him. Gray rain slicked their grips as they grappled. The chain whipped, nearly, catching her temple. She angled the bar across wrists, levered hard. His grip failed. Links clattered to the ground. Rowena jabbed the pry bar's chisel tip into his shoulder, pinning him. Stay. Shock widened his eyes, whether at the command or the strength behind it, she could not tell. Blood clouded rain at his sleeve. She kicked the chain toward the wash, whirled to scan for Clint. Gunfire ceased. Silence swallowed the ridge, broken only by the staccato pant of the horse and the susurrus of rain. Clint emerged from the gloom. Revolver aimed at the gunman she'd bested. "You breathe, boy, you talk," he rasped out. The captive swallowed. "Didn't sign for a woman with iron," he muttered. "Forbes said just scare you off." Rowena's stomach knotted. Forbes. The cattle baron's name tasted like rust on her tongue. Clint flicked a glance at her shadowed concern. "Paul hired bushwhackers?" the man grimaced. "Paid to rough a wagon. Prove you ain't welcome cross his allotments." Rowena felt anger kindle cooler than any locomotive furnace. The town bully had turned would-be murderer because a stranger. Dirtied his auction yard. Rifle barrels gleamed in surrounding scrub, two silhouettes retreating, deciding ransom not worth broken knuckles or Ashford's fire. The storm's heart shifted east, thunder drumming farewell. Clint sorted the prisoner's weapons, pocketed ammunition. "Tell Forbes this. Next time he wants to test boundaries, he steps across himself." He motioned with the revolver. "Go." The man fled, clutching bleeding shoulder. When darkness swallowed him, Rowena sagged against the wagon tongue, pry bar slipping from nerveless fingers. Tremors shook her frame, a delayed aftershock of panic. Clint holstered his revolver, approached. "Slow, you kept us breathing," she managed a ragged scoff. "Wasn't poetry." "No," he agreed, voice gentler, was grit. He scanned the wagon-broken rim, splintered boards. "We'll nurse her home." Rowena followed his gaze north, where distant peaks wetted by moonlight signaled the Cedar Frost Range. Home, the word felt dangerous, ripe with things she had never allowed herself. Permanence, belonging. Moon rode high by the time the wagon creaked beneath a split-rail arch bearing a cedar plank. Ashford Ranch Est, 1868. Beyond, lanterns burned warm squares in a stout ranch house flanked by bunkhouse, barn, and windmill whirring in playful night breeze. The scent of wet sage mixed with wood smoke drifted like lullaby. Rowena, perched again beside Clint, tried not to gape. The ranch lay hushed, but alive, cows lowing in distant pens, a shepherd dog trotting perimeter. As they rattled into the yard, a door swung open, spilling lamplight, and the silhouette of a tall woman, braced by two children. "Aunt Wynne." Clint called, voice bright with affection. The woman, hair silver as dawn, yet posture straight as fence post strode to the wheel well. "You're 3 days early and 1 horse short. Trouble?" Prodded, not pierced. Clint hopped down. Brief explanation, murmured bushwhackers, Forbes, rowdy weather. Wynne's gaze slid to Rowena, lingering on torn boots, oversized coat, coal-streaked face. Unlike Forbes, her scrutiny bore no contempt, only calculating curiosity. "Guest?" "Traveler," Clint said. Rain caught her, offered a bunk. Wynne nodded, decision made. "Kitchen's warm." "You look half-starved, girl." Rowena's cheeks flushed beneath grime. The children, a boy of 10, girl of 7, hovered behind Wynne's skirt, eyes wide. Rowena lifted a tentative hand. They shyly returned the gesture. Inside, yellow lamplight wrapped Rowena in a sensory quilt she hadn't felt since childhood. Bread rising, pine pitch walls, a ticking mantle. Clock. Winifred Ashford. Aunt Wynne steered her to the wash basin. "Soap's soft, guard it. Clint makes lye too strong." Rowena scrubbed it until water ran black, revealing skin raw but clean beneath. Wynne pressed a linen shift into her arms, pointed to a screen. "Change. Furnace room will dry the rest." When Rowena emerged, damp hair clinging like inked ribbon, shift hanging to calves, she found stew waiting. She ate under Wynne's watchful but silent company, spoon scraping every last bean. The children, Owen and Lark, asked questions only. With eyes, "Who are you? Will you stay?" She had no answers fit for tongues. Clint returned from stabling horse and wagon, collar slick with rain but eyes bright. He crouched by the hearth, poked embers. "We'll mend at dawn, rest." Rowena's body sagged, yet mind spun. I should go. Forbes, he won't like I'm here. Paul Forbes dislikes half the county, Wynne snorted. We manage. But the Hazard's leaving tired and alone. Clint's tone left no room for argument. Night deepened. Wynne guided her to a spare room smelling of cedar shavings and down quilts. Rowena hovered at the threshold, belongings clutched like shield. "A bet isn't a debt," Wynne said, reading the hesitation. "It's timber and ticking. Payments to rest so the dawn ain't robbed." Her voice softened. "Door latches. If you fancy." Rowena stepped inside, fingers brushing the latch that gleamed brass, simple mechanism, yet promise of choice. She closed it lightly, leaned against cool wood, and exhaled a breath she'd held since Cross Hollow. Hoof thuds and hammer blows carried from the barn. She dressed in her laundered clothes, miraculously cleaned overnight, and padded outside. Clint knelt by the wagon's injured wheel, spoke low to Owen, who held a brace and bit. Lark carded. "Pegs like precious eggs," Rowena offered quiet greeting. Clint straightened, smile slipping easily. "Morning, Miss Rowena." She twitched at the courtesy. "Wheels salvageable?" "Rimboard cracked, replacing." He indicated the forge shed where coals glowed. "Needs steam to bend new oak." Rowena's heart skipped a world of boilers, gauges, the safety of measured heat. "May I help?" Steam's familiar. Clint's grin widened. "Be honored." They worked side by side. Rowena fed the forge, coaxing flames with a bellows rhythm learned in roundhouses. Oak soaked in trough, then placed in. Iron steaming tube over the coals. Vapors hissed, fragrant with sap. Together they bent the softened plank along the wheel jig. Clint's broad hands and Rowena's slender cunning shaping a curve true to the original. Owen's gaze tracked every motion. "Pa," he began, then caught himself. Rowena saw pain. Flicker father absent, she guessed. Clint tousled the boy's hair. Apprenticed as fine work. The child beamed. By noon, the wheel rim cooled, smooth and strong. Rowena fitted new spokes, hammered dowels, trimmed excess with chisel strokes so precise Wynne paused her bread needing to watch. "You've the hands of a wheelwright," Wynne observed. Rowena shrugged. "Hands of a survivor. Learn what keeps." "Coin in pocket." Wynne's gaze sharpened, but she said nothing. Clint hitched both horses. He'd retrieved the runaway bay at dawn and tested the repaired wagon in a slow circle. Better than before. He reined in beside Rowena. "If you've a mind to stay a week or two, could use those hands. Harvest fence posts need setting." "Stay." The syllable drummed like hoofbeats in her ribcage. But memory of chains rattled by Forbes's thug-clouded thought. "Forbes will double down." Clint's eyes darkened. "He'll find shale to chew if he tries." Then gentler. "Decision's yours." Rowena looked toward Cross Hollow. The Mesa Ridge hid the town, yet its prejudice felt nearer than horizon. Stay and risk war she could not repay? Leave and wander until Dizzard or men swallowed her again? Before she could answer, the ranch dog barked, sprinting from the gate. Dust. Plumes climbed the track. A rider approached, flag of pink calico fluttering like distress signal. Clint stiffened. "That's Irene Miles' schoolmarm." He strode to meet her. Rowena followed. Irene reined her chestnut hard, eyes wide. "Clint posse from Forbes. 10 men. They arrested Doc Merrigan, claim he treated your prisoner. Threatened to torch Merrigan's clinic unless you surrender the woman who stole ranch tools and maimed his foreman." Her gaze slid to Rowena, apology heavy. Rowena's stomach churned. Forbes twisted truth like wire. She stepped forward. "I won't let a doctor burn for me. Tell Forbes I'll answer his charge." "No." Clint's refusal cracked like a whip. "He wants leverage." "Won't matter if you comply." Rowena squared shoulders. Running proves guilt. Clint's jaw flexed. And surrender feeds the wolf. Irene eyed Rowena's bruises. He drags a cage behind his buckboard. The words hung like gallows smoke. Wind gusted, rattling spare horseshoes on the barn wall. Rowena tasted coal grit memory, the moment. Steam valve burst because no one trusted her gauge reading. Lives lost because her word carried no weight. Not again. She met Clint's eyes, finding there a steadiness fierce enough to bank her rising dread. Then we outwit the wolf. Her mind sparked gears of schemes aligning. I need rope, 2 barrels, and the wagon steam tube. Clint's brow arched. Plan? Forge gave us steam. Desert gives us dust. She sketched a diversion, boiling sand, smoke thick enough to blind a posse. Wynn listened, approval gleaming. Clint's slow grin matched dawn over iron. Let's tend. Wolves. They moved at once, Wynn gathering sulfur from blasting shed, Rowena repurposing bellows into portable blower, children hauling water skins. By late afternoon, a false sun baked the yard. Heat shimmer rose from the blacksmith trench where the improvised sand boiler belched tentative plumes. The posse arrived at dusk. 10 riders fanned across the lane, rifles glinting. Forbes led in pearl-handled rig, face purple with self-righteous ire. Behind rattled a barred wagon cage door, yawning like iron maw. Irene stood between fence rails, hands raised bait. She's inside, she lied, voice quavering well. Enough. Forbes signaled 2 deputies. Fetch. Clint's silhouette emerged from barn, palms open. Evenin', Paul. Fence will mend. Let Doc Merrigan loose. Forbes spat dust. When the thief hangs, now Rowena thought. She crouched behind low wall where the sand boiler roared, steam mixing with Wynn's sulfur brew. She yanked. The release lever. Hiss. Roar. A geyser of superheated sand and yellow smoke blasted skyward, then cascaded across the lane like storm-wrung fog. Horses shrieked, rearing. Deputies vanished in cloud that scorched exposed skin. Forbes's mount wheeled. He lost reins, tumbled into the grit. Rowena sprang from cover, face wrapped in wet kerchief, goggles pilfered from Clint's tack. She dashed through opaque grit, chain loops in hand. One deputy flailed nearby. She clipped cuffs borrowed from Clint's branding, set onto his wrists, shoved him beneath wagon. Wynn, similarly shrouded, hauled another man down with broom handle. Club. Clint plunged through haze atop the bay, rounding panicked riders, slicing them away from Forbes like sheepdog nipping heels. He roped their rifle stocks, yanked to earth before guns could level. Forbes staggered blind, coughing dust turned to mud by sweat in his beard. Rowena confronted him, kerchief pulled away so he might see the coal smudges now transformed to battle. Stripes. She spoke low. Another step and the next cloud carries fire. I loaded sulfur thick. Forbes's bravado cracked. You wouldn't. You gambled 10 men's lives on a lie. Think on odds. Clint appeared, disarming Forbes, binding wrists while sand settled in sifting hush. Deputies lay groaning, eyes red, spinning threats powerless with lungs half burned by grit. Rowena drew a shaking breath. The plan had worked, but only barely. She felt the toll in every muscle. Yet triumph kindled something fierce and bright inside. She had saved, not fled. Sheriff Hollis arrived by midnight, summoned by Irene's riders. Lantern light washed over the huddled posse now cuffed to their own cage wagon. Hollis's verdict rang crisp. Charges against Ashford's dismissed. Forbes and men to stand trial for assault and conspiracy. As deputies led them away, Forbes glared at Rowena through swollen eyes. Dirt clings, he hissed. Rowena met his gaze with steady flame, and washes off. Shame sticks. Hollis tipped. His hat, admiration undisguised. Miss, if you tire of ranch work, county could use a deputy. Rowena's laugh surprised even her rich, unguarded. Let's start with fences. 2 weeks slipped by in rhythms she'd only watched from afar. Dawn milking, midday hay, dusk suppers were story-stitched kinship across rough boards. Rowena learned Lark's braids, Owen's nightmares, Wynn's secret fondness for dime store. Detective novels. Clint taught her the languid language of cataliers twitch that way when storms brew. That way when coyotes prowled. At night, she lay beneath the quilt, listening to the windmill creak like lullaby, wondering how long until this slender thread of peace snapped. Memory returned in shards. Freight tunnels ringing with curses, orphan wardens yanking braids, the nameless faces of men who used her strength, then cast her aside. Each recollection bled into the next until Clint's calm voice or Wynn's steady gaze anchored her again. 1. Evening under bruised sunset. Clint found her by the split-rail arch, eyes lost on the horizon. Tracks call in. Rowena's finger traced a groove in the post. Freedom's easier alone, safer. Maybe, but lonesome turns hearts hollow. His gaze sought hers. Hollow things break. She swallowed. What if breakings already happened? Then we mend like wheels steam, pressure, patience. He extended a small parcel wrapped in oilcloth. Rowena unfolded it. Inside lay a pair of leather gloves. Palms stitched double thick, fingers tailored slender. For working posts, Clint said. For building new tracks you choose. Her vision blurred. She slipped them on. They fit like second skin. Thunder echoed distant, a dry storm blinking heat lightning along the ridge. Clint's head tilted. Skies rumbling strange. Rowena's stomach dropped. Instinct recognized that cadence, not thunder. Artillery of iron wheels pounding rail. A plume of smoke smeared the horizon locomotive, black against amber sky barreling along the spur that hadn't carried freight in months. Asterisk, why tonight? And why did dread worm her gut as though the engine itself hunted? Clint followed her gaze. Lines disused. Not anymore. The train's whistle shrieked, 3 blasts rising, warning mixed with triumph. Flood of unease crashed through Rowena's ribs as long-suppressed memory surfaced. An engineer's laugh. A foreman's groping hand. A ledger signed with her name, then crossed out in red. The freight pulled a string of cars, boxcars, flatbeds, and at least one armored wagon glinting with riveted steel. On its flank stenciled letters loomed, asterisk Atchison, and Loomis Special Contract Government Property asterisk. Rowena's knees weakened. Armaments, she'd heard whispers of secret shipments desert-bound, guarded by rail enforcers who answered to coin, not law. The train thundered past the ranch siding without slowing. Yet Rowena's heartbeat hammered faster, not relieved. She sensed something aboard, something that clawed at the frayed edges of her old life. Clint's hand settled on her shoulder. Tracks are miles off, safe distance. But Rowena's gaze locked on a single boxcar door ajar, just enough for wind to toy with tarp. For an instant lightning backlit the gap, revealing a shape within. Crates stamped with hazard sigils, and crouched among them, a gaunt woman in shackles whose eyes burned with the same defiant fire Rowena felt at her own core. The train rounded. The butte, disappearing, leaving only night and the dying echo of iron on rail. Rowena's whisper trembled. They're taking prisoners. Clint searched her face, brows knit. What did you see? She told him, every detail the lightning etched. As she spoke, dread knitted with resolve. Somewhere out there, miles of desert track away, someone rode in chains too dirty to touch in some brute's ledger. Rowena flexed the new gloves. Leather creaked like oath. I can't stay behind a fence while that keeps rolling. Clint's sigh blended with night wind. Didn't reckon you wold. He turned toward the barn. I'll saddle 2 horses. Rowena closed eyes, gripped rail post for anchor. Peace brief, precious fractured like steamed oak without bend. Yet within the shards she felt something new, a purpose forged beyond survival. She opened her eyes to the starlit lane where dust already drifted from hooves in motion. Somewhere ahead thunder rolled iron, smoke, and captive ghosts waiting to remember their names. Rowena pushed off the post and stepped into the dark after Clint, the ranch, and the path that would lead her back onto the rails she once swore she'd never walk again. Asterisk, to be continued. Rowena slid from the threshold of cedar frost as though stepping across a seam in reality, one side stitched from hearth, warm shadows and children's laughter, the other woven of iron dust and locomotive roar dotting the yard behind her, porch. Lamps guttered in the wind, but ahead the road stretched pale beneath a starlit vault, leading toward a plume of darkness where the special freight had vanished. Clint's boot prints marked the track fresh, purposeful, and she lengthened her stride to match them. The night air smelled of rain, washed creosote, and cooled forged slag. Inside her leather gloves, a gift already battered by dustlight. Perspiration condensed, reminding her that resolve could sweat but must not slip. Clint waited by the tack room, adjusting the cinch of a sleek black gelding. Another horse, stockier and chestnut, whickered at Rowena's approach. Figured you'd keep, he said, eyes reflecting lamplight. Glad you proved me right. She swung into the saddle, settling unlaced boots into stirrups still warm from noon sun. Where's the spur join the main line? 31 miles north, Clint answered. Coyote Ridge Pass. Trainla. Throttle down for grade. We ride hard, cut across flats. We can make the trestle before dawn. Rowena tightened reins, and then? Learn why government iron hauls prisoners in secret, and get 'em out. No speech, no oath, just iron certainty. It steadied her better than prayer. They rode through scrub valleys where silence clung like dew. Coyotes tracked at distance, eyes yellow in moon glow, but tails low, wary of horses moving with such unerring haste. Clint led, navigating by memory and rare stone cairns that marked line shack routes. Rowena followed, pulse, dividing time into hoofbeats. Hours passed beneath constellations wheeling ancient stories overhead. Rowena's thoughts wheeled two memories of boxcars and stokers, the smell of steam-scalded flesh when safety rings failed, of supervisors laughing at the soot rat girl who dared complain. Each recollection fed the furnace of purpose. At length a faint hum reached them, steel singing under distant wheels. The grade loomed ahead. Coyote Ridge, a sawtooth escarpment, guarded by a trestle bridge spanning a ravine black as judgment. Clint reined in on a low bluff overlooking the track. Torch stakes dotted the far slope, signal crew prepping for the freight's ascent. Never lit those last month, he muttered. Rowena dismounted, crouched among mesquite. Looks like construction, but no workers this hour. What's under? The bridge? Dry gulch most years. Flash flood tonight if clouds break. Rowena's gaze tracked the ridge. A water tower set half a mile west, silhouette skeletal against dawn-blooming horizon. Tower feeds gravity. They'll stop there to take water or risk boiler burst on climb. Clint nodded. Gives us a window. They hashed plan in low voices. Clint would cross the gulch downstream, circle toward the tower base. Rowena would scale crusty ladder to the service platform as train braked. Cut brake line on armored car to force unscheduled uncoupling, once grade E standard emergency procedure, then create distraction. So Clint could get prisoners clear. She wiped palms on trousers. Luck's fickle. Clint's smile carried desert dawn. So are we. Wind funneled through the ravine in mournful currents. Rowena contoured along the bridge's timber trestles, gripping iron braces slick with condensation. Below, emptiness. Yod 30 feet, bottom unseen. Heartbeats drummed everywhere, chest, ears, fingertips. The freight's whistle echoed up line. Single long note. Approach water stop. She reached platform edge as engine chuffed into view, boiler front round and monstrous. Headlamp slicing gloom. Sparks streamed from stack like fireflies escaping. Hell. She lowered herself flat against planks. The locomotive thundered over and halted, piston rods sighing. Crewmen clambered down, torch lamps swaying. Two carried rifles, rail enforcers in dust coats, stamped A and L. One oversaw water hose coupling. The other paced alongside the armored wagon halfway down Consist. Rowena crawled across beam shadows to the armored car's underride. It's Westinghouse. Airline snaked glossy under moon. She drew her utility knife, sawed quick stroke until rubber hissed. Air bled. Brakes on that car only would fail once reservoir drained. Above, the pacing guard halted, sensed something. Boots crunched ballast. Drew nearer. Rowena pressed into shadow, knife palmed. The guard's lantern haloed her boots' mud-coated tips inches beyond cover. A shrill engineer call cut the silence. Valve stuck open. Need wrench. Guard turned, muttering, lumbered away. Rowena exhaled. She slipped forward, stole to boxcar door where chain padlock hung. Coal dust still rimmed her nails' useful grip as she jimmied tension. The lock resisted, but in that moment, thunder cracked sky, finally emptying pent-up storm. Rain hammered tin roofs, masking the soft cough when lock gave. Inside, darkness stank of oil and fear. Rowena eased door wide enough to slide in. Lightning flared, revealing crates stenciled asterisk black powder. Handle with care asterisk and three figures shackled to wall rings. Two men slumped, unconscious. And the gaunt woman Rowena had glimpsed, eyes fierce despite shackles. Quiet, Rowena whispered, producing lockpicks from glove seam. Name? Serafina Cruz, the woman rasped. Even beaten, her words carried command. Rowena freed her first. The other prisoners stirred, mining laborers by dress. She snapped their irons. They stared, dazed. Brake hoses clanged, refill complete. Train whistle blared. Rowena pulled door wide, guiding prisoners to jump onto embankment opposite. Guard patrol. She pointed toward ravine path where Clint would wait. Rain blurred lantern lines. They vanished into brush. She started to climb down when a shout erupted. Trespass! Rifle bolt slammed. Wood splintered near her hand. She leapt, hit gravel, shoulder roll. Pain flared ankle. Guard charged, lantern bobbing. Rowena hobbled. Into scrub, bullets slicing leaves. Ahead, she glimpsed Clint leading the freed trio toward washout. Cover were seconds too far. A gunshot roared behind. Guard fell mid-stride. Serafina stood over him, brandishing pilfered pistol. Run! She barked. Together, they dashed downward. Engine steam drowned pursuit calls. Rain turned slope to slick clay. Rowena slid, arms pinwheeling, colliding with Clint at base. He steadied. Her, eyes scanning. More coming. Torchlights speckled ridge crew mustering armed search. Rowena's ankle screamed. Progress slow. She spotted culvert under Trusselstone tunnel for runoff. Waist-deep water gushing. There, they sloshed inside just as lantern beams swept bank. Water chilled to bone, roaring loud enough to mute voices. Rowena's breath fogged. Ankle throbbed where boot twisted. Serafina crouched. Even in gloom, Rowena saw branding scars patterned across woman's wrists, a lattice of past chains. Recognition furnace glowed between them. Clint signaled silence. Above, guards tromped across sleepers, rifles clicking. One tossed flare downward. Crimson light sizzled water near tunnel mouth. Dying walls blood red. Rowena pressed against. Stone, holding breath. Flare hiss died. Footsteps receded. When silence settled, Clint exhaled. Ridge trail cuts west. If we hit Juniper Line before daylight, we lose them. Rowena nodded, though ankle rebelled. Serafina noticed, tore strip from skirt, bound joint tight. Lean on me, she ordered. They waded downstream until culvert opened into cottonwood thicket. Pre-dawn gray filtered through leaves. Rain eased. Storm moving east. Behind, engine stack belched starting blast. The freight regained motion minus cargo and prisoners. Clint steered them along cattle paths, weaving between boulders. Serafina's stride matched his, despite shackled bare feet. Rowena hobbled but refused to slow. Thunder receded into moan, replaced by first birdsong. By full dawn, they emerged atop a knoll overlooking Ashford Land. In distance, smoke from ranch chimneys rose inviting. But Clint halted, eyes narrowing toward Cross Hollow Road where dust columns approached, mounted riders bearing sheriff's colors. Rowena's gut clenched. Hollis? Hollis rode at front, but accompanying him were uniformed marshals, unfamiliar hue. Badges glinting, Clint's jaw tensed. Federal muscle. After train fiasco, they'll round anyone involved. Rowena glanced at Serafina, the woman's jaw set. They cannot take me again. Hollis raised hand in greeting as they descended slope. Clint rode forward alone to parley. Rowena stayed behind scrub with Serafina and rescued miners. She watched. Silhouettes, Hollis gesturing animated, Clint replying calm. A marshal dismounted, produced metal manacles. Clint's shoulders stiffened, refused. Guns lowered towards him. Rowena inhaled sharp. Ankle aside, she could still run, draw pursuit, but that risked Clint. She scanned terrain. Dry arroyo to flank, leading to ranch barn. If Clint created diversion, she could shepherd refugees home. But Clint suddenly turned horse, trotted back. Escorted by marshal. His expression bore weary resolve. Federal warrant, he said low. Forbes lawyers cried sabotage and theft of government munitions. They'll arrest everyone connected. Rowena's pulse hammered. You didn't touch powder. Doesn't matter. He dismounted, handed reins to her. Take them to Wynn. I'll ride with Hollis. Buy you hours. No, Rowena whispered. They'll railroad you. He smiled faintly. Railroads work two ways. I'll hold track while you lay yours. He pressed something into her palm, a folded survey map inked with bat trail routes. Fine proof why that train hauled prisoners. Exposed truth. Warrant crumbles. Emotion swelled, fear, gratitude, something sharper. She squeezed his fingers once. Then Clint turned, surrendered Colt, allowed irons on wrists. Marshals wheeled. Columns south towards Silver Creek Jail. Rowena watched until dust swallowed them. She unfolded map arrows marked to remote switchyard labeled Black Mesa Depot. Serafina stepped beside, eyes fierce. That's where they hold others, where they branded me. Rowena met her gaze. We free them, for Clint, for all of us. She swung into saddle, ignoring ankle pain. Miners climbed on Chestnut behind. Serafina mounted Clint's gelding, though. Shackles still ringed ankles, her poise radiated command. They wheeled west, hidden by juniper, as the sun cleared ridge, lighting a trail of dust and gunpowder that waited ahead. Behind, the ranch shrank to amber dot. Ahead, Black Mesa rose like promise and threat blended. Rowena urged the horse faster, heart drumming a vow. No one else would be called too dirty to touch. The ride to Black Mesa Depot carved 40 miles across unforgiving flats. Rowena dosed her ankle with laudanum retrieved from Clint's saddlebag. Pain dulled into background growl. Day heat baked earth into cracked mosaic, but dusk delivered relief, and with it, ominous silhouettes of telegraph poles marching toward Mesa foothills. Serafina described depot layout: long sheds, stock pens converted to holding cells, a portable derrick for loading crates, labeled mining equipment, but heavier than ore. Guards, 50 or more, many ex-militia now wearing A&L badges, paid in manifest ledger lines rather than law. Thunderheads gathered as night fell, a second storm brewing. Rowena welcomed the cover. She guided their small band to an abandoned prospect shaft overlooking depot yards. From there, lanterns cast a hive glow on rail spurs lined with armored wagons, identical to one she'd breached. A bell clanged shift change. Guards shuffled to mess tent. Rowena sketched plan on dusty plank. Miners would cause distraction at supply dump, setting tar sheets ablaze. Rowena and Serafina would infiltrate holding pens, unlock cages. Storm would cloak escape toward river. Gulch north. Lightning flickered, the storm's timing perfect. They readied. Rowena donned spare guard coat from wagon salvage, smeared face with axle grease. Serafina hid shackles under tattered skirt, a smuggled revolver strapped beneath rag bandage. The air tasted of copper against storm electricity or blood memory. She couldn't tell. Rowena steadied breath. Clint's map tucked at her belt felt. Like heartbeat. Free them, clear names. Rescue Clint. Desert wind carried distant whistle midnight, express bound east. Within hours, another shipment might roll, carrying fresh prisoners deeper into oblivion. Rowena turned to Serafina. We move when first drops fall. Thunder growled agreement, sky strobing white, and with that celestial cue, Part 3's scene. Dims to black, pulsing with electricity primed to detonate. Asterisk, to be continued. Rowena's boots whispered over scree as she guided the gelding along Black Mesa's northern gulch. The first violet hints of dawn seeped into the desert, streaking the butte crowns like bruises fading to memory. But the depot below remained. A hive of sullen activity too, many torches sputtering to be mere routine. Only 2 hours had passed since they'd slipped from the culvert. Yet in that span the federal marshals had hauled Clint towards Silver Creek, and the engines of the Atchison and Loomis spur had begun belching again, preparing. Serafina suspected. For another run deeper into the interior, where no county sheriff or curious rancher could interfere. Rowena's borrowed guard coat, dried stiff with mud, scratched her neck. Every turn of her swollen ankle sent needles through her calf, but she anchored breaths in a steady loop. Inhale, feel pain, exhale, shelve it. Survival had taught compartmentalization, but this mission demanded more. She must think like coal, under pressure endure, until heat-forged diamond resolve. Below, a steam crane swung a crate the size of a farmer's wagon toward an open flatbed. Even at distance, Rowena read the stencils. Asterisk earmark ordnance, U.S. property nitro mix. Shock sensitive, asterisk she cursed it under breath. Powder they could hide in boxcars. Natro demanded suspension, careful crating, and above all secrecy. Whatever Atchison and Loomis shipped, it was meant to reshape landscape or men in brutal, irrevocable ways. Serafina crouched beside, shackles still clinking with each breath, though Rowena had sawed the chain so a stride was possible. Lines of exhaustion etched her cheekbones, but if weariness tugged at her soul, it found no purchase in her flint gaze. The miners are in the arroyo, Serafina whispered, voice husky from inhaled dust. They will wait for my signal tar fire. Rowena nodded, rolling map edges between gloved fingertips. Clint's ink scrawl boxed 3 objectives. Asterisk 1, free prisoners. 2, secure proof. 3, ruin the tracks. Asterisk, the gallows simplicity of the list steadied her spine. Rescue was half won. Proof remained vapor until captured on ledger or telegram. And the rail's heavy artery of crime must bleed. Win one battle at a time, she murmured. First, prisoners. They picked their entry with surgeon care. Rowena natural in shadows of trestle cribbing. Serafina slinking through waste rows where spare ties cut silhouettes like grave markers. The depot's perimeter fencing an ugly hybrid of barbed wire and picket-gated 3 livestock pens converted into makeshift cells. A lantern swung from each gatepost, revealing shapes huddled under canvas. Men and women, some in miners' garb, others in soiled dresses or clerk trousers, all cuffed. In pairs like livestock awaiting brand, Rowena's lungs constricted. Slavery wasn't dead on this frontier. It had simply traded whips for ledgers and pistols. 2 guards patrolled the aisle, one young, struggling to keep rifle dry. The other older, mustache pinned by grizzled jowls, revolver holstered loose. Rain-sodden ground kept their steps loud advantage. To Rowena, She signaled Serafina. Asterisk count 10 beats. Distract left. I take right. Asterisk Serafina vanished behind a stockpile of track spikes. Rowena flattened against a rail cart, counting heartbeats. At 10, a sharp metallic clang erupted, Serafina toppling a crate. The younger guard whirled, cursing, trotting toward. The noise, Rowena sprang, boot knife flashing. She caught the older guard's collar, jammed steel behind ear, and hissed, "Make a sound and I blow that nitro before sunrise." He stiffened, pulse hammering under her blade. She relieved him of revolver and keys in one fluid scrape, then shoved him into hay pile, binding wrists with belt. The youth returned moments later, flustered about crate spillage. Rowena flattened deeper into shadows, watched him pass, then ghosted behind. A swift pistol butt to temple folded him like wet canvas. Keys rattled through Rowena's gloved fingers. As she hurried to pen one, a gaunt man peered through slats, bruised eyes widening. "Who? Friend, step back." She twisted heavy padlock, swung gate. Stench of confinement billowed, gagging but ignorable. Someone muttered Spanish prayer. Another sobbed relief that sounded half feral. Rowena hushed them, single file, head for Arroyo North. "Follow the boy in check shirt, he knows the path." The miners Clint freed nodded from rear, ready to shepherd new refugees. Rowena and Serafina flowed gate to gate, unfastening chains, issuing terse directions. In 10 minutes, 20 souls slid through fence gaps into desert dark. Then a klaxon shrieked piercing. Mechanical rail grade alarm triggered from main office. Rowena's blood iced. Patrol discovered missing guards early. Lights blazed across. Yard, sweeping aisles. Rowena shoved last prisoner outward, snapped padlock to buy minutes of confusion. Serafina tugged her sleeve. Now proof. The dispatch shack squatted at yard's southern edge. Windows shuttered. Telegraph scooter wire buzzing like angry bees as alarm relay transmitted. Inside would be Ledger's manifests linking Forbes or bigger fish to contraband trafficking. Rowena skirted crane shadow, limping faster than foot allowed. Rain tapered, good for stealth, bad for sulfur smoke plan if gusts died. They reached shack back wall while guards converged on pens. A padlocked latch barred door. Rowena inserted knife tip, popped hasp-rust crumbled. This depot trusted fences. More than locks. They slipped into stifling room reeking of lamp oil and cigar. Shelves bulged with thick logbooks. Carbon copy bills, sealed government pouches. Rowena grabbed ledger titled Asterisk Special Consignments. Q3, Asterisk Serafina rifled file drawers, retrieving envelopes stamped War Department. Footsteps clamored outside. Rowena dragged ledger to telegraph bench, tore carbon leaf and rolled into waxed cloth portable. But preservable. She stuffed ledger into burlap sack for good measure. Crash door shoulder slammed. Rowena and Serafina flattened behind filing cabinet. Door splintered inward. 2 enforcers barged, lantern beams scything. "Check safe," one barked. Rowena felt Serafina tense, pistol half drawn. 2 against 2, perhaps winnable. But gunfire inside wood shack among nitro manifests spelled hell. Rowena scanned for alternative, window panel brittle with age. She eased latch, but hinge shriek would betray. Lantern swung closer. Sergeant peered between cabinet and wall, suspicion creasing brow. Rowena's heart hammered like piston. She gripped pocket watch from coat-heavy brass and flung it across room. It clattered behind desk. Guards wheeled toward noise, guns raised. Serafina and Rowena surged up, slammed cabinet at their backs, wooden monolith, tipping like felled tree. Crash engulfed lantern, oil splattering into flames. Guards shouted, pinned under drawers. Rowena yanked Serafina, bolting through fresh blaze to door. Outside, alarm whistles now blended with shouts. Asterisk prisoners loose. Gunshots cracked in distance miners. engaging search teams with rocks and tar torches. Depot Yard became chaos, gorged by smoke and rising wind as second storm front marched overhead. Rowena and Serafina raced north between freight stacks. Rowena's ankle shrieked every stride. Adrenaline drowned Dot at supply dump, tar sheets already burned, casting thick black plumes. Figures sprinted past bearing pickaxes, refugees arming themselves. A single cry sounded, not of pain but triumph. The miners had overpowered Gatehouse. Rowena searched for her horse, hidden behind water barrels. She vaulted saddle, hauling Serafina up. To Gulch. A rifle shot cracked close. Saddle horn splintered. Rowena dug heels. Gelding sprang Dot behind. Depot wagons rattled, chasing enforcers. Lightning forked, outlining horizon where freed crowd flowed like dark river toward Rocky Gully. Rowena steered to intercept, must lead them to safe ravine path that curved back toward Ashford Land. Thunder boomed. Rain returned in spears. Mud. Slick trails, impeding wagons. Ahead, Gulch mouth yawned, narrow, steep, perfect choke point. Rowena dismounted, limped to ridge edge. Serafina heard them into channel. I hold mouth. She pulled Clint's rope from saddle, anchored to bluff boulder makeshift tripline across path. As first wagon thundered closer, she braced. Heart sinking to approaching rumble. At 20 yards she jerked rope taut. Wagon tongue hit line, horses tangled, impact flipping carriage on side. Enforcers spilled in mud, cursing. Before second wagon could swerve, miners rolled boulders down slope. Crash blocked lane. Rowena signaled retreat deeper into Gulch. Rain drowned gunfire. Night cloaked them as they wound labyrinthine channels, emerging miles later onto rolling flats north of ranch territory. By sunrise, exhausted caravan reached Cedar Frost outskirts, Rowena's makeshift kingdom of fence posts and milk pails. Now staging ground for rebellion. Wynn marched from porch, shotgun resting casual on elbow, eyes taking measure of ragged influx. Rowena briefed in clipped phrases. Prisoners freed. Clint captured, evidence secured, depot burning. Wynn's composure barely flickered, but iron settled in her voice. Gather them in hay barn. Lark will fetch blankets. Owen ride for Doc Merrigan. He treats burns. Serafina pressed ledger into Wynn's hands. Names, bribes, cargo. Wynn leafed pages, nostrils flaring. Enough nails to hang Forbes twice and heap on railroad. Suits. Rowena's shoulders sagged relief. Yet danger coiled still. Federals held Clint, and Atchison and Loomis would send more than ranch thugs next round. She limped to corral rail, blood-wetting sock. Wynn joined, wrapping supportive arm. Hearts hollow, you mend them, but you's cracked too. Rest. Rowena shook head. Clint'll hang on false treason by dusk. We move before they seal Silver Creek. Wynn considered, then whistled shrill. Ranch hands 36 tough women and men converged. Wynn addressed them, government or no, we fetch our own. Saddle and load. Sheer rose ranch unity, forged by Rowena's stand 2 weeks prior. Rowena turned to Serafina. Need you here guiding refugees. Serafina clasped her wrist. I wear chains until all are free. I ride. No time to argue. Rowena nodded. She strapped ankle, mounted fresh horse. Wynn tossed her a carbine sleek Spencer repeater. Dust plumes kicked as posse thundered south Rowena. Wynn, Serafina at vanguard. Ashford brand fluttering on makeshift banner. Clouds parted, revealing sun crisp and merciless, as if sky itself. Wanted witness, Silver Creek Jail sat on Butte's edge, a sandstone fortress with barred windows and gallows yard. Clint's cell, they learned from Doc Merrigan's telegraph intercept, overlooked East Wall. Federal marshals awaited judge. Circled for expedited hearing at noon. Rowena's posse reached Canyon Rim overlooking Jailtown mid-morning. They dismounted among pinyon pines. Below, Courthouse Square bustled. Gallows timbers newly tarred. Rowena scanned. 4 marshals on roof, rifles, 2 by gate. Sheriff Hollis visible arguing with a man in blue frock coat, probably federal judge. Clint glimpsed at barred window. Wrist still chained. Plan hatched swift. Win lead decoy drove cattle herd through main road to draw rooftop aim. Ranch hands flank. Rowena and Serafina infiltrate rear sewer culvert maps courtesy of Merrigan. Free Clint, then meet at stable where hidden wagon waited. High noon bell tolled as Win cracked whip, releasing cattle from stock pens purchased. At dawn auction, they thundered into street, bellowing. Townsfolk scattered. Marshals shouted. Rowena and Serafina dashed culvert grate, sawed rust bolts. Slipped inside. Tunnel stank, water ankle deep. Rowena's wound screamed, but she pushed on. Up ahead ladder led to cell corridor. Above, guard paced. Rowena timed footsteps, popped hatch. Serafina sprang, silent as shadow, sapped guard with pistol. But, corridor clear. Clint turned at noise, relief blazing in eyes. Was wondering when train rattling through would be you. Rowena kissed his mud-smeared knuckles while sawing chains. Brief, electric. Alarm erupted. Roof sentry spotted hidden flank. No more stealth. They sprinted down corridor as bells clanged. Courthouse door burst as judge emerged shouting for order. Wind stampeded herd nearer, horns clashing fence. A calf-slammed gallows post platform collapsed in spectacular crash. Startling marshals, Rowena, Clint, Serafina tore into yard. Wind tossed rifles from behind wagon. They vaulted sideboards. Ranch posse fired covering shots, hooves churned. Dust. Marshal captain rallied men at bridge out of town only crossing over Silver Creek Gorge. Rowena lashed reins, wagon wheels screaming toward choke point. Bridge narrow marshal barricade across with wagons. Rowena drew Spencer, fired at. Axle shot true, wagon titled, opening gap. Clint snapped reins. Team barreled through as bullets whistled. Bridge planks thundered. One splintered, but wagon cleared, racing for Canyon Trail. Marshals forced a circle, giving precious minutes. Behind, smoke rose from jail errant fire meeting lantern, setting. Roof ablaze. Seat of federal power in county, kindled by their escape. Rowena did not look back. Ahead lay cedar frost, ledger evidence, and a telegraph line Win would light to newspapers beyond desert. Yet she knew Atchison and Loomis would unleash full might now. Clint squeezed her shoulder. You brought storm to their doorstep. Rowena managed taut smile. Will rain until rot shows. Thunder not of weather, but distant locomotive answered special freight. No doubt sent to reclaim contraband and silence rebels. Rowena tightened grip on rifle. Battle lines were rails running straight through her life, and she finally chose which side to stand. Far behind, locomotive whistle keened. Slicing heat wave, a predator's howl promising reckoning. Rowena's heart steadied to answer. Asterisk to be continued. Rowena's heart steadied to answer, but the reply that thrummed through her chest was not a sound, it was motion. A wordless vow that rippled down her spine like steam coursing iron pipes at full pressure. The wagon's wheels screamed over rutted earth. Clint's lean frame balanced the reins, and behind them Serafina fed cartridges into the Spencer repeater with methodical calm. Eyes always on the dust plume, the locomotive cast against the far horizon. Though the train still lay miles south, its whistle had pierced the desert hush like a talon promising reprisal. Rowena felt the note vibrate along every rail stretching from Black Mesa to Cedar Frost, like a warning shudder echoing through a monstrous skeleton of steel. Somewhere on that engine, a man she had never met wound more pressure into the boiler, coaxing ever greater speed out of pistons so that vengeance might arrive before dusk. But dusk, Rowena thought, no longer belonged to Atchison and Loomis. Tonight, dusk would kneel to the desert, to the people it had blistered, to the hands that had cracked under gang chains, to the hearts that had known hunger and still chosen to shield strangers. Tonight, dusk would damn well kneel to her. She braced. Her boot still slid open at the toe against the wagon's footboard and scanned the landscape. The ranch's northern fence line shimmered ahead, its posts casting long spears across pale grass. In the barnyard, Wynn's children and the freed miners were already erecting makeshift barricades from hay wagons and beam offcuts. Strings of tin pans clattered in the hot breeze, a poor man's alarm system, but Rowena knew it'd serve. Sometimes clamor, not caliber, tilted a fight. Owen spotted them first, gangly silhouette waving from the windmill's catwalk. Rowena lifted her hand in answer, but the gesture's relief soured as pain flared through her ankle. She hissed, muffling it. Clint's glance flicked sideways. Still swelling? Swelling's a luxury, she muttered. Pain reminds me I've got a foot at all. He grunted approval or worry, she could not tell. Moments later the wagon lurched to a stop beside the water trough. Wynn emerged, double-barreled shotgun balanced on one shoulder, eyes sweeping the horizon. Locomotive? She asked. Clint jumped down, boots thudding. Heard the whistle. Serafina saw smoke. Wynn's gaze hardened. Then we count scant hours. She pivoted to Rowena. Ledgers telegraphed, newspapers already nibbling. Governor's office wants proof in hand before sending rangers. Rowena's laugh came brittle. Governor's finger in same pie. He'll stall. Exactly, Wynn agreed. So we must close Ledger for him. Train carries more contraband. If we stop it openly, county can't ignore. Serafina hopped to the ground, shackles rattling faintly. Better to capture train than defend ranch from bombardment. Rowena's head tilted. Derailment? Wynn shook hers. We'd risk lives and lose proof. But there's a spur west of Devil's Step old ore loop ending at Dead Cliff. Switch lever rusted, yet functional. Redirect train, trap it against canyon wall. Rowena's pulse quickened. Board it before they can reverse. Clint rubbed dust off chin. Need men on both ends, one to throw switch, others to seize engine. Men and women, Wynn corrected, nodding at the miners, many of whom now hefted picks like halberds. Plan solidified, crisp as starlight. Rowena, Serafina, and a handful of spry volunteers would ride fast to Devil's Step. Cut telegraph line so crew could not warn central dispatch, and position at spur switch. Clint and Wynn would muster ranch hands to follow with wagons carrying water and blankets for any additional prisoners they freed. Rowena flexed aching fingers. Coal dust still lurked in nail beds despite Wynn's lavender soap, a memory of engines and cuss words that had shaped her. Now that past would prove boon. She accepted a canteen, drank deep, then swung into a fresh Mount Starlight, a dapple gray whose gait ran smoother than dreams. Serafina mounted behind, shackles sawed short so they would not catch stirrup. Not cutting those entirely? Rowena asked. Serafina's eyes flared. Let them remind me. Thunder grumbled again, though no clouds crowned the sky. Rowena realized it was the train, a subterranean rumble creeping through rail beds, heralding the metal beast's approach long before sight. Ride, she ordered. They rode. By noon the heat's hammer struck full. Columns of shimmering air rose from cracked clay flats. Each breath tasted like iron filings. Rowena guided the posse along shallow arroyos, using buttes to shield dust plumes from Scouts Atchison and Loomis might have riding ahead of the freight. Devil's Step revealed itself as a solitary mesa finger, jutting east like a broken tooth. The spur track, once used to deliver ore carts, curled around its base before terminating at sheer limestone bluff, the perfect cul-de-sac to trap a locomotive. Telegraph poles marched alongside main line, wires singing faintly. Rowena dismounted, limped up embankment. She extracted Clint's fencing pliers, clamped jaws around copper, twisted until strands snapped with a musical twang. Serafina held the ends while Rowena stripped insulators, tying wires back so break. Looked like lightning strike. Sagebrush rustled. Rowena froze hand to carbine. A jackrabbit burst from cover, startling a miner named Brom. He breathed curses in Bohemian, then chuckled shy apology. Rowena exhaled shakily. No bullets till whistle splits our ears. They cached horses in a box canyon east of Switch. Then inspected lever. Rust-fused pivot, but Rowena's borrowed grease and Brom's broad shoulders conquered corrosion. They left lever in mainline position, weighted by a rock wedge. When the locomotive's cowcatcher cleared junction, they would kick wedge, heave lever, and force rest of consist onto spur while engine continued straight. With vacuum brakes severed between tender and armored cars, Rowena would take care of that. The wagons would be trapped behind. Powerless, sweat pooled beneath Rowena's collar. She poured canteen water over bandana and draped it across swollen ankle. Temporary balm. Why risk so much? Brom asked softly, in accent thick with Carlsbad Springs. You owe us nothing. Rowena laughed, but the sound cracked like desert bark. Oh, myself. Ran too long. Time to stand. Serafina placed calloused hand on Brom's broad arm. She speaks for us. Wind shifted. Rails began to sing. Rowena stiffened. Positions. They scattered Brom and two miners manning lever's rear. Rowena near coupling clamp, Serafina. With rifle high on talus overlooking spur mouth, the train approached, a leviathan of iron love and greed. Pistons pounding, heartbeats monstrous. Rowena counted boxcars, 6 armored, 2 passenger coaches likely carrying guards, and at rear, 3 flatbeds sagging beneath caged wagons covered in tarp. Prisoners. Steam vented. Desert quivered. Rowena crouched beside track, driver wheel towering. Above, she withdrew hacksaw, sliced air hose between tender and first armored wagon, the same sabotage she'd used before. Hiss of escaping pressure masked by engine roar. She rolled under next wagon, repeated. Meanwhile, engine thundered past. Switch. Wedge popped free. Brom's boot. Lever slammed. Row of wagons screeched onto spur. Coupler slack thunked, a jarring jolt Rowena felt through spine. She scrambled clear. Engineer, sensing drag, blew short alarm whistle. Brakeman spun wheels butt. Vacuum lost. Wagons coasted powerless along spur, momentum carrying them around Mesa Bend until inertia died 50 yards from cliff face. Guards spilled from passenger coach. Rifles scanning. Atop cliff, Serafina fired warning shock bullets striking dirt near Foreman's boots. Panic blossomed. Some dived for cover, misreading attack direction. Rowena advanced with hands raised, voice amplified by curious calm. Down arms. We hold. High ground and powder holds you. Harm a prisoner and we send nitro to the moon. It was bluff, no nitro here, but in heat haste truth and threat blurred. Guards hesitated, eyes darting to crates labeled shock sensitive. One lieutenant stepped forward, jaw rigid. You again, he snarled, recognizing Soot's smudged visage. You cost us Black Mesa. Rowena leveled Spencer. Cost only has begun, he sneered, raising rifle. Serafina's next shot parted lock of his hair. Dust spurted. He froze, beads of sweat forming. Rowena gestured. Keys, toss them. He obeyed, Keering skittering across ballast. The miners surged, disarming stunned guards. Meanwhile, Rowena sprinted toward flatbed cages, heart hammering. She slashed ropes, yanked tarp. Beneath huddled 15 children ages maybe 5 to 14 eyes. Huge against grime. They shrank, expecting lash. Rowena fell to knees, lowering rifle. Name's Rowena, you're safe. A girl with braids lifted wary chin. They said we were train grease. Rowena's stomach lurched. Not anymore. She snapped cage lock, arms trembling. Children spilled into sunlight like chicks freed from coop. Some cried. Others stared mute. Rowena swallowed lump, checked each for wounds. Most bore rope burns. Bruises, not broken bones. Brom shouted. Unhitched guards corralled at wagon. Rowena signaled for Serafina to keep watch, then turned to Lieutenant. Explain, children. He spat. Nothing to tell. Contract labor. Rowena's palm cracked. Across his cheek. Try again. He glared, blood-trickling lip. Company-acquired orphans from human missions. Intended for tunnel digs where small bodies fit shafts grown men can't. Brom punched air, cursing. Serafina's eyes burned. Rowena fought nausea. Asterisk small bodies. She pictured soot-choked crawlways she'd braved as boiler sweep. At 12. She faced the children. Ever ride a horse? Some shook heads. She smiled. We'll learn. She flagged miners to load crates of documents from passenger coach. Inside, she discovered satchels of silver coins stamped with federal mint dates, kickbacks for officials perhaps. Evidence. They bound guards with torn seatbelts, marched them beneath cliff overhang, and Rowena addressed the group. Sunsets. Behind Mesa in 3 hours. After that, desert cold will bite. We follow ravine north to ranch where you'll eat warm bread. Any man raising hand against a child answers to me. The guards eyed rifles, said nothing. Rowena turned to miners. Barry. Natro crates, they belong to no one. Quick spades scraped and cases disappeared under shale. Children mounted behind adults. Others rode in wagon previously carrying contraband. Serafina steered engine switch to block spur rails, ensuring no quick retrieval. As caravan crested north. Ridge, Rowena glanced back. Bronze locomotive still idled. Angry smoke plume flaccid in hot air, like a muted dragon robbed of flame. They reached cedar frost near dusk. Wind had turned barn into infirmary. Blankets spread over fresh straw. Volunteers from surrounding homesteads, those indebted to Clint for water shares, brought broth, boiled eggs, spare clothing. Rowena's ankle ballooned inside boot, each step ground bone. Yet she moved stall to stall, checking children's fevers, pressing compresses on bruises. Clint found her bandaging a boy's cracked knuckle. He touched her shoulder. Exhaustion tugged her limbs, but when she looked up, his eyes glimmered with something fierce and tender. You did it, he murmured. Not yet, she thought. How many more trains? He sighed. Ledger says last. Shipment originates tomorrow from Burro Bend. Bigger. Rowena's pulse stuttered. And Forbes? Marshal Captain took him into custody after jail-burned corporate distanced themselves. But he posted bond. He'll reappear. Rowena tied knot, blood and ears roaring. We finish this tomorrow, or they regroup. Clint guided her outside where Mesa sunset painted clouds copper. Voices filtered from bunkhouse miners singing. Lullaby to children. Rowena, he began, but words stalled. He took her hands, calluses meeting blistered gloves. Whatever comes, you gave them hope. Hope, Rowena nearly said, could die under hoof. Instead, she removed gloves, revealing raw knuckles. She placed one on his chest, feeling heartbeat resilient as anvil. Together, we give them more. They stood so until Wynn's sharp whistle snapped attention. Ranch perimeter scouts signaled. Riders approaching 8 silhouettes under dusk. Rowena's stomach clenched. She and Clint fetched rifles, striding to gate. As figures neared, recognition eased tension. Sheriff Hollis rode front, white flag raised. Behind, 6 uniformed cavalrymen and a man in government frock. Same judge? No younger, spectacles catching. Light, Hollis dismounted, hand open. Ashford, Lachlan, we need parley. Rowena's jaw tightened. Parley seldom favored the innocent. Speak. The spectacled envoy stepped forward. Agent Lawrence Finch, Department of Justice. Governor sent me to investigate allegations. He produced telegrams stamped with state seal. Clint scanned briefly. Nodded. Rowena crossed arms. Your governor slow track when lives online. Finch removed spectacles, polished calmly. Politics move as treacle. But newspaper wires do fly. Chicago Tribune printing claims that A&L Traffic's forced labor. Investors furious. We need statements, evidence, witnesses. Wynn approached holding ledger bundle. Have cargo manifests, bribe lists, prisoner testimony. Finch accepted. Rifled pages, eyes widened. Enough to crucify officials. He closed folder, gaze earnest. Protect this ledger and your people. But understand A&L private militia now rogue. If they attack, cavalry support limited, Rowena scoffed. Limited how? Regiments stretched across 4 counties quelling range wars. We muster 20 riders by dawn, no more. 20 against Atchison's hired guns likely triple. Rowena's pulse thrummed. Yet she saw in Finch's expression genuine shame. Perhaps not all government men were tarnished, she breathed deep. We accept alliance, but we strike first. Tomorrow's freight at Burro Bend we intercept. Finch hesitated. Regular troops cannot engage without formal order. Rowena leveled gaze, then deputized ranchers. Rangers of necessity. Hollis smiled wearily. I like her thinking. Sign badges I can give. Serafina emerged from barn, shackles finely cut, ankles bleeding but unbowed. She stepped into. Lamp glow, eyes twin coals. We ride with or without badges. Finch surveyed ragtag assemblywomen in calico gripping Springfield muskets, miners brandishing picks, children peeking behind fence rails and straightened spine. Then I ride too. Agreement solidified with no handshake, just shared stare into gathering dark. Midnight found Rowena alone atop windmill, hair whipping in gusts that smelled of impending storm, the third in as many weeks as though. Heavens mirrored human upheaval. Below, farmhouse windows glowed where wind drafted testimony. Barn lanterns flickered where children slept fitful dreams. Rowena cradled throbbing ankle, head resting against chilled steel. Exhaustion tugged eyelids, but mind raced. Track grade calculations, locomotive brake failure distances, number of rifles they possessed, 28, against likely enemy, 50 plus. Odds grim, she recalled first rule of survival. Asterisk a body. In motion is harder to hit. Asterisk she envisioned train at Burro Bend deep cut between granite walls. A natural choke point like canyon of prophecy. If they could block tracks ahead then board from rear while cavalry flanked cut, they could force surrender without full firefight. Wind howled. Rowena shivered though sweat-dampened shirt. She sensed presence before hearing tread. Clint climbed. Ladder quietly settled beside her. He offered flask of rye. She sipped. Warmth fire-walked throat. Could have used this earlier. She teased. Doctor's orders. After battle, he said. Silence stretched comfortable. Coyotes chorused afar. Clint sighed. You'll leave after this, won't you? Rowena blinked. Why? Because rails run further than fences. Because storms chase you and you chase them back. For a long moment, she considered desert horizon, its infinite righteousness. Rowena's stomach lurched. Not anymore. She snapped cage lock, arms trembling. Children spilled into sunlight like chicks freed from coop. Some cried. Others stared mute. Rowena swallowed lump, checked each for wounds. Most bore rope burns. Bruises, not broken bones. Brom shouted. Unhitched guards corralled at wagon. Rowena signaled for Serafina to keep watch, then turned to Lieutenant. Explain children. He spat. Nothing to tell. Contract labor. Rowena's palm cracked. Across his cheek. Try again, he glared, blood trickling lip. Company acquired orphans from human missions. Intended for tunnel digs where small bodies fit shafts grown men can't. Brom punched air, cursing. Serafina's eyes burned. Rowena fought nausea. Asterisk small bodies. She pictured soot-choked crawlways she'd braved as boiler sweep. At 12. She faced the children. Ever ride a horse? Some shook heads. She smiled. We'll learn. She flagged miners to load crates of documents from passenger coach. Inside, she discovered satchels of silver coins stamped with federal mint dates, kickbacks for officials perhaps. Evidence. They bound guards with torn seatbelts, marched them beneath cliff overhang, and Rowena addressed the group. Sunsets. Behind Mesa in 3 hours. After that, desert cold will bite. We follow ravine north to ranch where you'll eat warm bread. Any man raising hand against a child answers to me. The guards eyed rifles, said nothing. Rowena turned to miners. Barry. Natro crates, they belonged to no one. Quick spades scraped and cases disappeared under shale. Children mounted behind adults. Others rode in wagon previously carrying contraband. Serafina steered engine switch to block spur rails, ensuring no quick retrieval. As caravan crested north. Ridge, Rowena glanced back. Bronze locomotive still idled. Angry smoke plume flaccid in hot air, like a muted dragon robbed of flame. They reached cedar frost near dusk. Wind had turned barn into infirmary. Blankets spread over fresh straw. Volunteers from surrounding homesteads, those indebted to Clint for water shares, brought broth, boiled eggs, spare clothing. Rowena's ankle ballooned inside boot, each step ground bone. Yet she moved stall to stall, checking children's fevers, pressing compresses on bruises. Clint found her bandaging a boy's cracked knuckle. He touched her shoulder. Exhaustion tugged her limbs, but when she looked up, his eyes glimmered with something fierce and tender. You did it, he murmured. Not yet, she thought. How many more trains? He sighed. Ledger says last. Shipment originate. Half hour in, Rowena's shoulder bruised from recoil. Serafina weaved between wagons, reloading rifles of downed defenders. Children cried beneath cellar trapdoor. Rowena spared glance wind, cheeks powder black, still coordinating. Then thunder. Boomed real this time. Down canyon, cavalry bugle cut through gunfire. Finch's riders appeared, silhouettes leaping fire trenches. They had crossed burned track anyway, forcing horses over, because telegraph from scouts reached them in time. Militia line faltered under fresh assault. Some fled, others dug in. Rowena loaded last cartridge, aimed at Thatcher, who now rallied men near dynamite barrels. She squeezed hammer, clicked empty. Thatcher ignited fuse, hurling dynamite toward rickety barricade where children's cellar lay beneath. Time slowed. Rowena leapt from wagon, sprinted hobbling steps, ankles screaming. She dove, scooped smoking stick, rolled behind trough. Fuse spark hissed inch from charge, no water in trough dry. She wrenched boot knife, severed fuse milliseconds before. Flash, sparks died. A shadow loomed, Thatcher swinging saber. Rowena blocked with rifle stock. Wood shattered. Saber tip grazed her arm, blood warm. Thatcher growled, raising blade for kill. Gunshot exploded. Thatcher staggered, saber dropping. Behind him stood the braid girl from Cagenell holding Serafina's pistol with both trembling hands. Rowena caught. The child's wide eyes as blade clattered. Thunder rolled. Rain began anew, quenching fire lines. Militia rooted. Finch's cavalry secured field. Rowena knelt, pulling child into arms. Girl whispered, "Train grease, no more." Rowena swallowed. Tears, never again. Wind carried scent of wet sage, the scent of endings and of beginnings. But as Rowena lifted gaze, she saw a distant below south horizon ablaze where mainline bridge burned. Atchison and Loomis scorched earth behind retreat, sealing county from outside rail. Clint limped to her side, pointing. They'll regroup in Burrow Bend Hills, war's not over. Rowena nodded, exhaustion thawing into grim determination. She rose, feeling night's weight, but voice steady. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. 2 days passed in fevered repair, tending wounded, burying dead, fortifying ranch. Finch wired Washington. Headlines blazed coast to coast. Yet reinforcements weeks away, telegraph lines south severed, and Burro Bend stronghold gathering. Men and munitions, Rowena stood on hill dawn of third day, ankle bound, arm stitched, watching dust clouds swirl from canyon. Scouts reporting movement, Atchison and Loomis preparing final push before Rangers arrive. They would either crush resistance or die, and Rowena felt in marrow the land would accept either blood. She turned to Clint, Wynne, Serafina. Children lined with stones and slings, miners gripping tools. Hope and fear wove tapestry tighter than any chain. Rowena inhaled, voice carrying across ridge. We don't fight for ledger, land, or vengeance. We fight so no child is ever trained grease again. We stand because if we fall, they rewrite story. Cheers rose ragged but potent. She nodded, satisfied. Then eyes settled on gorge where rails twisted like black ribbon. She glimpsed shapes flat cars, modified with Gatling mounts rolling via handcars, militia pushing. They approached with sinister silence. Rowena's pulse quickened. She lifted spyglass, saw explosives stacked on lead flatbed, set to demolish Cedar Frost silo. Cut food chain. Clint muttered. If they cross open field we can pick them, but Gatlings mow our line. Rowena's gaze flicked to abandoned water tower at ridge edge. Rusted tank still clung to frame above track. She smiled narrow. We dropped the tower on rails. Serafina's brows rose. And us? We'll be on it. Plan insane. Ride into gorge, climb frame, hack braces as convoy passes, send 10-ton cistern crashing onto Gatling cars. Buying seconds for cavalry charge. Wind clapped Rowena's uninjured shoulder. Make steam of them. Rowena grinned despite tremor in belly. She turned to Child with braids, Lirio now her shadow. You stay with Wynne. Child shook head. I guide you path through ravine. Know every foothold. Argument died on Rowena's tongue. She saw reflection of her younger self, soot-covered, defiant. She nodded once. They mounted swift Mustangs, thundered into ravine while militia handcars squealed steel above. Cliff walls pressed close, sound of heartbeats. Deafening. Reaching tower base, Rowena dismounted, ankle stabbing. She and Lirio scrambled ladder as Clint and Serafina tied horses. Set fuses on spare dynamite, not for blast, but to cut final struts if hacksaws failed. Wind up high fierce. Tower creaked like old ship. Rowena crawled along catwalk, hacking at rust-eaten rivets. Below, first convoy car clacked closer 50 yards, saw teeth gummed. She cursed, grabbed hammer, smashed rivet heads. Metal groaned. Serafina on far side planted charges, slow match lit. Fuse sputtered, 20 yards. Gatling crews oblivious, laughing, priming hopper. Rowena kicked final brace. Bolt snapped. Tank lurched but held still, anchored by central spine. Convoy. Beneath now steel roof glimmering. Lirio, braced on rung, shouted. Center bolt. She tossed Rowena thin crowbar. Rowena wedged bar, heaved. Bolt refused, rust fusing like sin. 15 seconds fuse left. She roared, channeling every lash of past, every mile run, every child caged. Spine of tower shuddered. Bolt warped. With explosive clang it sheared. Tank tilted, moaning timber. Rowena grabbed Lirio, flung toward ladder. They slid as tower buckled. Water cistern crashed, splintering track, pulverizing Gatling mount. Explosion followed. Serafina's fuse shattering remainder into cloud of steam. Wood, screams. Rowena hit ground hard, shockwave sucking breath. Dust blinded, ears rang. She staggered up, Lirio at her side, unscathed save scratches. Convoy rear. Cars screeched halt, militia stunned. From Ridge Peak's cavalry bugle sounded the final charge. Rowena raised rifle, voice hoarse. Cedar Frost. Defenders poured from ravine mouths. Militia lines crumbled under crossfire. Clint tackled captain off horse. Serafina and miners seized Gatling's now twisted wreckage, turning one still usable onto handcars. Mowing retreat. Battle ended swift as it began. Atchison and Loomis forces surrendered or scattered into desert. Rowena. Chest heaving, surveyed field. Wrecked cistern steaming, upended handcars, children safe beyond. Her knees buckled, Clint caught her. They sagged together. Rain finally began, cool, gentle, washing blood and dust. It felt like absolution. But distant rumble persisted, this time not train. Finch rode up fast, face pale. Telegraph from Capitol. He gasped. War Department denies every charge, calls ledger forgeries. They're sending regular troops to seize evidence. Rowena's bones chilled. How long? 2 days. Wynne joined, eyes fierce. We hold. Rowena shook head slowly, resolve crystallizing to something sharper than steel. We take evidence to them. Right into Capitol, Clint frowned. 200 miles. Rails broken, Hollis added. Rowena met each gaze. Then we ride. Freight we just captured. Steam engines ours now. We got Gatlings, load ledger, survivors, truth. Drive it to Carson City ourselves. Finch's eyes widened, half terror, half admiration. Federal track guarded. Rowena bared teeth. Let them guard lies. We ride with truth. Lightning flashed, illuminating battered survivors rallying anew. Sparks of hope igniting faces. Rowena clambered onto wrecked flat car, voice carrying across hush. We stole back lives, burned chains, broke tracks. Now we break silence. Tomorrow at dawn, the Too Dirty to Touch Brigade rides steel into hearts of men who thought dollars could rule. Cheer rolled like thunder across ravine. Rowena locked. Eyes with Clint pain and pride swirling. Journey far from over, but next rails would not shackle. They would deliver. As night deepened. Caravan of makeshift patriots began repairs on damaged engine, stoking firebox for longest run of their lives. Rowena pressed palm to smokebox, feeling vibrations, heartbeat of revolution. Above, stars burned fierce, and somewhere in them Rowena imagined Sarah's gaze, lost friend, turned guiding light, shining approval. She whispered, "Steam's up, let's roll." Steam hissed in the dusk blue hush, rolling over Cedar Frost's yard like breath from a titan waking. Sparks lifted from the captured locomotive's stack, spinning into the night until desert wind devoured them. Rowena Loughlin stood on the tender deck, gloves creaking around the shovel handle, and felt the engine's tremor reverberate through boots, soles, and marrow alike. She had spent the hours after battle nursing torn ligaments and fractured hopes. Yet the moment the first coal ignited in the firebox, her pain receded beneath a surge of familiarity. This was where she had learned resilience between furnace doors and boiler plates, coaxing pressure to the precise brink of rupture without slipping into chaos. Tonight she would coax justice the same way. Around her, once frightened miners and rescued orphans clambered over running boards, threading lantern wire, stacking crates of evidence beneath tarpaulin. Clint Ashford stalked the platform, double-checking pin couplers. Serafina Cruz stood atop the first boxcar, pale flame of a carbide lamp shuddered in her palm, eyes sweeping the moonlit plain for any shape that might become an enemy. Farther back, Wynne Ashford directed ranch hands as they loaded casks of water, sacks of grain, and at Rowena's insistence, 3 barrels of freshly drawn axle grease. If the rails ahead grew hostile, a smear of grease on a grade could foil pursuit. Far better than a bullet. Sheriff Hollis, favoring a bandaged shoulder, supervised the rechristening of the locomotive with whitewash brush. Across the boiler jacket he painted bold letters ***, Liberty Limited ***, under which Finch the Justice Department envoy added in smaller strokes, human freight only, children. Ringed the scene with widening eyes, absorbing the transformation of a weapon of oppression into a vessel of deliverance. Lirio-braided warrior, pistol now holstered like a diminutive ranger, stood at Rowena's elbow. You sure boiler will hold? Rowena smiled, clanging shovel blade against grating. She's tired but true, like most of us. Thunderheads brooded on the southwestern horizon, amber veins of lightning pulsing within. Somewhere beyond those clouds, Ruo Ben's hillside bunkers and the War Department's mercenary bloc amassed whatever force they could salvage after last night's rout. But telegraph wire Finch strung from Cedar Frost to Carson City still lay intact, and Rowena had used it to hurl truth into the capital's marble halls. Now they would bring the proof in person. The plan was insane, a 180-mile run through hostile county, across sabotaged trestles and federal barricades, driving a patched engine with a fraction of its usual crew. Insane, yes. But sanity had served desert tyrants too long. Rowena clanged the firebox door shut. Pressure at 160, she called. Breakers pinned. Blow off ready. Clint signaled back, voice carrying over chuffing exhaust. All aboard. The ragtag brigade clambered up ladders, miners into gondolas, children into a refurbished coach stripped of benches to lay blankets. Serafina remained on roof walk, rifle resting across knees. Wynne took position at the rear platform, shotgun cradled. Finch hoisted the Justice Department satchel into the baggage car and locked the door. Rowena eased the Johnson bar forward. With a judder and staccato cough, the Liberty Limited rolled toward the mainline switch Wynne's crew had repaired at dawn. Steel wheels clanged onto bright filed rail, sparks kissed smoke, and the ranch fell away behind them, lanterns shrinking to fireflies as the night swallowed the safe pocket they had carved. She knew she might never see it again. *** mile 024. Running in the dark ***, the first stretch across plateau country belonged to the moon. Rails glimmered like ribbons of tin, and coyote yips tracked them from ridgeline to ridgeline. Rowena kept hand on throttle, nursing steam so the engine would not belch an exhaust cloud visible for leagues. Every few miles they stopped to toss grease on the outer rail and sprinkle sand on their own flanges, a trick Rowena recalled from strike days in Kansas when scabs tried to overtake freight. Inside the coach, children whispered fears beneath quilts. Lark Ashford read aloud from Wynne's dog-eared detective pamphlet, exchanging villains' names for those of Atchison and Loomis thugs, transforming terror into bedtime entertainment. Hollow places in hearts needed stories the way boilers needed water, Rowena mused. She checked gauges again, needle steady. Wind streamed through cab windows, fluttering her coat like a tattered banner. Clint climbed up from tender with water. Dipstick. Sight glass half. Next tank at Pinto Crossing 20 miles. Rowena nodded, scanning bleak terrain. Track where Forbes burned patch? Wynn's hands laid new ties yesterday, Clint said. But spikes are fresh, could shear under speed. Rowena eased throttle. They coasted, clanking softly until Pinto Water Tower loomed skeleton silhouette against Starfield. Serafina, stationed on caboose roof, signaled all clear. They stopped, pumped water by hand, 3 miners working lever until their backs bowed. As they finished, a thunderclap rolled, not clouds but explosives. Distant eastern horizon flashed. Rowena's gut clenched. Bureau Bend stronghold testing charges? Or blowing trestles behind them to trap? She found Finch at baggage door, scribbling dispatch. Telegraph poles end 5 miles north, he warned. Lines beyond were cut days ago. After that, we're on our own. Then we outrun rumor, Rowena said. They mounted up, throttle opened. Liberty thundered into night. Mile 2560. The sabotaged cut near Ghost Hollow, the mainline tunneled through basalt. Rowena reduced speed in anticipation. If she were enemy, she'd sabotage inside a tunnel. Serafina's signal whistle, 2 descending notes confirmed caution. Torchlight flickered ahead. Rowena reversed. Train rolled to gentle stop. She and Clint crept on foot, skirts and duster flapping. Lirio, refusing to stay, trailed with a Lantern shaded under blanket. Inside the tunnel, they found rails disjoined, the fishplates removed, spikes pried. A wedge of dynamite rested against one tie, fuse coiled but unlit. Worse, overhead timbers soaked with kerosene, Rowena's pulse. Spiked. If they'd barreled through at speed, weight would buckle rails, topple cars, spark explosion. She exhaled gratitude for suspicion. Clint retrieved spare spikes from tool car. Miners arrived with mauls. Rowena knelt, aligning frog plates. She directed Lirio to hold Lantern, its glow trembling but constant. As they worked, hoofbeats echoed. Down the tunnel from northern mouth scouts returning. Serafina jogged in, winded. Handcar on grade. 5 riders pushing, rifles ready. Rowena's brain flicked through options. Tunnel walls narrowed to single track, no flanking fight. She hissed, douse lanterns. Darkness swallowed them. She unslung boiler hammer, pressed back against wall. Riders clattered in, metal shoes striking sleepers. Torch beams stabbed gloom, silhouettes scanning. A rider dismounted to ignite fuse. Clint's boot sent railroad. Spike skittering deliberate lure. Rider pivoted. Rowena swung hammer, connecting with shoulder. The torchman crashed. Torch rolled guttering. Chaos erupted. Miners tackled 2 more. Serafina's knife flashed, cutting reins. Horses panicked, bolting deeper into tunnel toward distant exit. Remaining rider fired blindly. Ricochet sparked off stone. Lirio shrieked but held her ground. Clint tackled shooter. Rowena wrenched fuse from dynamite block, snuffed flame with boot. Within minutes, all enemy subdued, bound with rail wire. Left to contemplate darkness and conscience. They respiked rails, doused kerosene with sand. An hour lost but lives gained. Back aboard, Rowena allowed herself a breath before leaning. On whistle cord. 2 sharp blasts for forward, 1 long for vigilance. Liberty answered. Drivers pounding rhythm with renewed urgency. Asterisk, asterisk. Mile 61, 100. Ridge of the vanishing stars. Asterisk, asterisk. Dawn crept. Desert sky birthed lavender, then rose. Morning wind chilled sweat, slick skin. Rowena's ankle and arm throbbed beneath. Bandages, but the hum of rails lulled pain into background buzz. At mile 80, the track ascended. Eagle feather ridge, serpentine grade hugging cliffs. Clint shoveled sand into Sanders for traction. Rowena kept throttle near full, watching crown sheet water like a hawk. Blow-off hissed. Cylinders pounded slow but steady. At summit, vista spread, 1,000 square miles of Nevada basin, salt. Flats shimmering in morning gleam, it should have been beauty. Yet there, far below, a thread of dust betrayed riders pacing the train. Maybe 24 in closing. Finch climbed the cab, spyglass raised. Burrow Bend mercenaries. They'll attempt to board in lowlands. Rowena pursed lips. We grease the downgrade. She explained quick. At Ridgefoot, the track bed across Alkali Flat. A smear of axle grease on inner rail would cause steel shoes to spin. Stalling pursuit wagons, while the train's own flanges would maintain contact by way. Serafina fetched barrels. Miners ladled glistening grease over sleepers as Liberty coasted down grade. The smell tallow and petroleum sickened, but Rowena's grin returned when she saw mercenary horses skidding at bend. Mounts spreading legs comical as drunk goats. Rifle shots fizzled wide. They were making distance again. Asterisk, asterisk, mile 101, 140. The river. Bridge, asterisk, asterisk. Carson River curled like a silver serpent across the basin. The iron trestle that spanned it had survived 2 flash floods, but Rowena eyed every rivet. Suspiciously. Scouts rode ahead on pump car, returning with sign that bridge appeared sound. Still, Rowena reduced to walking pace. Halfway across, Serafina on boxcar roof spotted a sputtering fuse trailing from bridge beam, a time bomb rigged to blow once locomotive weight compressed girder. Rowena's blood iced. She reversed. Train halted, pistons clanging. Clint and two miners dropped to crawl along outer walkway. Time ticked heartbeat fast. Fuse sizzled inches from powder keg wedged into girder pocket. Clint severed fuse with knife, then hurled dynamite into river. Splash, then muffled hump underwater, a plume rising. Rowena released breath, nudged engine ahead yard by yard until trestle's far end. She'd breathed coal dust for 15 years, but only now understood what it meant to taste fear like mercury on the tongue. Asterisk asterisk. Mile 141,175. Ghosts in the capital's shadow asterisk. Asterisk Carson City's domes glimmered by afternoon. But as they approached, switch yard at Willow Flats, a telegraph peon sprinted up the ballast, waving frantic. Finch accepted dispatch, face paling. Federal troops deploy at Union Station. He read, with orders to seize unauthorized train, detain passengers, and secure contraband. Governor cites public safety. Rowena met his gaze. They'll paint us saboteurs. Or rebels, Finch murmured. Clint unfolded pocket map. Alternate route? Finch shook head. All tracks converge. But he hesitated. Capitol Spur remains unused dead end track behind Legislative Building. No guards. Rowena's mind seized the chance. We drive straight to their doorstep. Make them confront evidence in open. Wynn joined, eyes aflame. Turn ceremony. Public. Press already camped at Capitol for governor's re-election rally. Rowena's pulse quickened. Then we give them a spectacle. They switched spur at Westgate, Liberty chugging through residential cut lined with picket fences. And astonished townsfolk, children waved. Stodgy businessmen dropped lunch satchels. The ragtag train coughed past Rose Gardens, under wrought iron pedestrian bridge, until the gleaming dome loomed overhead. Clint bellowed whistle, 3 triumphant chords. Steam mushroomed skyward while miners braked with handwheels down. The grade. Liberty rolled to stop at foot of marble steps where brass band had rehearsed political marches moments earlier. Now stood mouths agape. Rowena swung from cab. Coat flaring, the crowd parted. Reporters with press ribbons sensed blood. Rushed with notebooks. Finch, in full government regalia, mounted platform of caboose. Voice carrying, ladies and gentlemen. Presenting human cargo liberated from Atchison and Loomis's illegal labor trade. He flung baggage doors wide. Children stepped out, followed by miners, shackles dangling, brand scars exposed. Gasps rippled. Camera shutters clicked. Rowena hoisted. Ledger high. Manifest proof of bribes, forced labor, and treasonous munitions dealings. Governor Traynor burst through Capitol doors flanked by state guards. His smile collapsed seeing camera flash. Finch, you exceed authority. Finch bowed theatrically. Authority invoked by Constitution. He produced War Department envelopes. Signed by Secretary Dunn, misappropriated to private rail lines. Rowena advanced, handing ledger to the nearest journalist. Publish every page. Guards raised. Rifles, Finch waved them off. Any shot fired becomes confession. Cameras pivoted, rifles lowered. Serafina appeared with crate. Kicked lid. Inside gleamed silver bribe coins and stamped nitro detonators. Proof enough? She challenged. A surge of townsfolk pressed forward. Family of miners lost. Labor unions, church elders. Governor paled, retreated inside under booing. Hollis read official warrant. Finch drafted en route, deputizing miners. As federal witnesses, couriers sprinted to telegraph office. By sunset wires pulsed across continent. Yet Rowena sensed tension, unsteh, final coil. She found Lirio perched on buffer beam, gaze south. Riders, the girl whispered. Dust. Plume again, Atchison and Loomis's last gambit. Cavalry of 30 with Gatling rebuilt. They thundered toward Capitol Lawn. Intent on assassinating witnesses before newspapers typeset, Rowena sprinted for Liberty's cab, Clint already checking steam. "She's still hot," he said. Rowena climbed aboard, tugged whistle warning. Civilians scattered. Miners grabbed rifles from rack, forming line behind locomotive pilot. Serafina unslung Springfield, chambered round. "Can't fire Gatling through engine's boiler," Clint reasoned. "We use Liberty as shield," Rowena slammed throttle. The locomotive lunged forward 20 yards, interposing between riders. And steps. Mercenaries skidded, horses balking at steel beasts spewing steam. Thatcher, the same Captain Rowena bested, roared, waving saber. He aimed Gatling lever. Clint shoveled sand into blower. Rowena jerked Johnson bar into reverse. Liberty belched dense cloud of soot and cinders across horseline. Animals panicked. Bullets sprayed wild, pinging off boiler jacket. Miners fired from behind Liberty's skirts. Several riders fell. Rest broke formation, circling to flanks. "Win!" And ranch hands held right side with shotguns. Finch rallied state militiamen, newly enlightened to governor's corruption on left. Battle raged across Rose Garden. Rowena maneuvered Liberty like battering ram, hissing jets from cylinder cocks to spook mounts. Gatling jammed after ingesting soot grit. Thatcher cursed, drew pistol. Rowena saw opening. Thatcher under statue of miner's angel. She grabbed. Sandbucket climbed pilot handrails and vaulted landing on well deck of Gatling flat car. Pain flared but adrenaline drowned. Thatcher swung pistol. She deflected with bucket rim. They grappled atop swaying car as engine tail rod buffeted coupler. Thatcher backed her toward edge, sneer-splitting burned lips. "End of the line, dirt." "Girl." Rowena seized his coat lapel, voice steel. "Lines extend." She hooked ankle behind his, twisted. Thatcher toppled, skull cracking against Gatling frame. Pistol skittered away. She dragged him upright, blood-streaking brow, and shoved him to waiting state guards who clapped irons on wrists. The sight of their captain fallen broke remaining mercenaries. They surrendered. Silence descended, broken, only by Liberty's labored breath. Rowena sagged against Gatling barrel as rain-warm summer rain began to fall, washing soot from her brow. Epilogue. Rails reforged 2 months later. A cool September sunrise gilded cedar frost. Fence. Post stood repaired. New schoolhouse beams stretched toward sky, raised with miners' hands and ranch lumber. The Ashford brand on cattle fetched fair price now that Forbes sat awaiting trial alongside Governor Traynor and Secretary. Done in federal custody a spectacle. Broadcast by every major paper, Rowena strode along paddock, ankle finally healed. Children chased chickens under wind's fond scold. Finch sat beneath peach tree, drafting land grant reforms. Clinton Forge hammered horseshoes, singing softly. Rowena leaned on gate. Peace tasted different, now not fragile, but burnished, like steel quenched in brine. It rang when struck. A distant whistle blew northbound passenger, legal and on time. Rowena smiled, touching brim of hat Lirio had woven from rye straw, her conductor's crown. Clint approached, wiping soot. Train due back from Capitol carries news. Congressional bill outlawing private prisoner transport. Rowena nodded. "Took stealing." She met his eyes. "You still think hollow things break?" He brushed her glove. "They also ring." They walked to Windmill where new plaque hung. Asterisk Rowena and Clint Ashford Cooperative. School of Steam and Steel Education freeze. Asterisk Serafina rode in from range, leading supply wagon. She dismounted, ankles scarred, but free, and presented Rowena a package. Inside, a government badge engraved Railway Safety Inspector. "They want you to keep trains honest," she said. Rowena laughed. "Honesty on rails. Ambitious." Children crowded, Owen holding homemade wooden engine. "Miss Rowena." "Show whistle signals?" Rowena knelt, demonstrating patterns. Laughter bubbled bright. Lark threaded daisies into Wind's hair. The matriarch tolerated with mock sternness. Overhead, Liberty Limited, now repainted Sarah's Promise in honor of Rowena's lost friend, rested on new siding. Her brass polished. She would serve as rolling classroom, teaching mechanical arts to any soul labeled unclean or unworthy by men in ledgers. Rowena gazed at engine, remembering days when she too was freight without name. She inhaled desert air laced with coal smoke and lavender, and felt the engines of her life settle into steady RPM that all trains left scars. Some charted sky-wide possibilities. Up next, 2 more great stories are next. Don't miss them. Subscribe and turn on notifications.